Hello and welcome to SyrupCast. My name is Daniel Bader, and I am joined by three very lovely and talented individuals. As always, Douglas Soltis, how are you?
Bah, 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 bah! I've
Doug is
returned to the
high
pod.
on DX3. BetaKit is one of the media sponsors there, and Douglas and his team have been doing a cracking job
Well, we're
covering
cracking.
the event.
We're the
Jamie
cracking.
McIntyre, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. You got the Christmas theme going on.
I do.
And Tom Emrich, all the way from London, England. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you for having me.
We can't see you because you have no webcam. So explain what you're wearing right now. Tell us in very specific detail.
Well, one thing I've learned in London is that they put everyone to shame from a fashion perspective, so I'm trying to keep up here. I have a trench coat. That's not kind of a sleazy trench coat. It's actually a nice wool one.
What are you wearing
Scarf.
under the trench coat?
That's for you to find out in the next podcast, so stay tuned.
Oh, okay. Once you have your webcam back.
Yes.
Well, speaking of fashion, we wanted to get you on here. You've just been at a wearables conference in London, and you've been covering, you've been talking about the Apple Watch quite a lot, and we learned we learned a lot about the device this week at an event in San Francisco, and wanted to get your impressions. So we know you have to leave, and your input is invaluable. So, I mean, what did you take away from the big announcement? You know, the vast delta between cheapest and most expensive versions, the fact that it's such a fashion-forward wearable, and it's really the first wearable that's fashion first and smartwatch second. And I just wanted to take, you clearly have a good head for figuring out whether these things are going to work. So, is it going to work?
It will work, but I want to just say one thing about the Apple event. I was very disappointed with the Apple event from an Apple
me
Watch
too.
perspective. I was very underwhelmed, and I would never have done it the way that Apple did it. And what I mean by that is that the stars of the show were Research Kit, which was just an amazing crowdsourced medical solution that is really going to change the world, and the new MacBook. And I'm not usually one to get excited about a computer, but that was pretty snazzy. So it seemed like the Apple Watch was almost an afterthought. And the fact that Cook just recapped everything that we basically knew, except for pricing, availability, and a sneak peek at a retail experience that I think is lacking. I kind of left really like, what? That's how you're going to leave us with your Apple Watch? Now, that being said, that's just the event. I have no doubt that the Apple Watch is going to be the most successful smartwatch that we've seen so far, and it will impact the rest of the space. Meaning if you don't want to move over to an iOS device, it will impact the sales of Android Wear smartwatches, and it will put the pressure on Google to make Android Wear better. We've seen some rumors about how that will change. The fact of the matter is that Apple has been in the accessory business for a very long time, if you think about that.
Mm-hmm.
People are used to going into the Apple store and buying more than just an iPad or an iPhone. They've had headphones and various accessories for a very long time. So I think the Apple user is used to buying some extra stuff from Apple, and they're used to paying a lot from Apple. Like, those are the two things that that have been the same. So now we have a new thing from Apple, which is the smartwatch. Is it expensive? Yes. Would I have loved to see it be $100 less for the sport and the watch versions? For sure. But I think people are going to buy it, and I really think people are going to buy it because of a couple things, if not just from a vanity and status perspective. That's the fanboy Apple cult, if you were. And I think people are going to be looking around on the streetcar, in the subway, and come April 24th, you're going to be looking at people's wrists to see who forked out the cash for it, and then it'll plant a seed, and then you'll convert, and that's just how the first Apple Watch will be successful.
So you think that people who weren't otherwise interested in an iPhone will buy one just because they want to buy a watch?
I think people who, so the first thing is people who are kind of interested in a smartwatch we'll definitely pull the trigger on the Apple Watch. That's the first thing. But I think let's peel back the layers a little bit now, and let's start looking at some of the unique features of the Apple Watch, including, I think, the digital touch, which is genius. I think they've hit it out of the ballpark with that. I think some of the features / what I mean by features more is apps will start to draw people in. So it's going to be the early adopters, of course, that are going to start to buy this, but then the early adopters will start showing their friends the 1 or 2 applications that really make them get excited, like an Uber or whatever it might be. We're not quite sure yet. And it's going to be the applications that do not think mobile first. And, you know, I'll tell you, I cried a large tear when Tim Cook showed notifications on the smartwatch. And when he started off by saying, hey, guys, you know, don't worry, all of your notifications come on this watch as is. I was like, no, like that's the worst. Instagram, no, that's the worst. Like, come on, like, you know, you're sending me mixed messages here. You're reinventing communication by allowing me to send my heartbeat, using touch, using haptic feedback in a way we've never done before. You're showing me, you know, the alarm.com and the Starwood Hotel app that really shows that micro engagement, really quick actions and glances make sense on this watch, and then you confuse me by saying that all this other mobile stuff also works on it. So, you know,
Well,
I think that was
Tom,
confusing. Yeah.
is it confusing or just like the necessary bridge because they don't have as much of the futuristic stuff to demo because it's not built. Like with the first iPhone demo was like, hey, you can make phone calls. It can play music. Look how simply it does the things that you're expecting it to do.
And I think it's also. Sorry, go ahead.
Just the value of the device came after because it did those established things, right?
Yeah, and I think people who've been like Apple users who've been waiting for a smartwatch have been watching their Android or their Android using friends be like, you know, oh, I got it because it just popped up on my wrist, and I think it would be unfair to expect that Apple wouldn't, you know, throw that in on top of the pile just to keep people happy.
No, don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't think we should be getting notifications. I just think that sending notifications as is without any thought as to what exactly I should be seeing on my wrist, that is not the direction that we should be moving forward. But I think you are right, Doug. If you look at the original iPhone, it wasn't perfect when it came out. And it is a little bit of that bridge where we have to get used to this new form of computing while leveraging the old at the same time. Kind of like when you change cat food. I don't know if you've ever done that, but you have to put a little bit of the old food in with the new food in order for your cat not to puke. Maybe that's where we're at.
Frisky blend. The frisky
That's
blend.
an amazing analogy.
Yeah, cat puke. That's the name of the podcast. Apple cat puke.
But Dan, I don't think I answered your question about why people would buy the watch. I think it's going to be early adopters from a status perspective. Then, like I said, it's going to be the apps that convince the other friends that, hey, I really would love to raise my hand and call Uber. I think that's how it's going to eke in. But at that price point, they only need to sell a certain amount to make a real killing on the watch, especially at 10,000. You know.
Well, I mean, the $10,000 watch is. I think people overstate how that is Apple's intention. The $10,000 watch is a status symbol. It's a way for them to project the Apple Watch into areas where a smartwatch could never go.
Yes.
So that's the Apple Watch is not meant. The Apple edition is not meant to make a lot of money. It may, by virtue of the fact that it costs $10,000 and that they need to sell 1/100th of them to make the same profit.
Yeah, no, I think it's with that thing they're looking to sell like 1,000 total or something. Like
and they said they're making a limited number and they're not going to be available at every Apple store.
Yeah,
But they did that on purpose. I mean, yes,
yeah.
it's expensive to source all that gold, but they're doing it to limit the supply because it makes sense for them to create an artificial supply constraint for a device like that.
When the rich kids of Instagram see that
first people
Beyonce has one, they'll be like, oh, I have to get one.
Who were the first people to have smartphones?
Early adopters.
The rich and wealthy.
Well,
No,
I mean, that's not.
They weren't early
early
adopters
adopters
by. Yeah, they were either dealing in finance and therefore dealing in wealth, or were specifically wealthy and powerful. When you're talking about a device that is a watch, which has its own kind of like built-in high-end marketplace, it's just only designed to be on the wrists of people that would make you want to wear a watch.
Right, but I mean, the iPhone was an interesting example of how that's not necessarily the case. That, you know, because of the carrier subsidy model, a device that was normally $900 to $1,000 became accessible to everybody. I mean, I'm not saying the iPhone is cheap, and Apple has not created a low-cost iPhone on purpose, but there's no real barrier to the everyday person purchasing an iPhone.
Not anymore. Not anymore, but
well, no, I mean, the first generation one was short-lived, right?
But that wasn't the first smartphone. I'm talking about BlackBerries and earlier devices. The only people that had that were the people that, you know, needed it for work and dealt in wealth, or the people who are like rich enough to be like, yeah, I'll get this smartphone thing and communicate through email because I'm a VIP. And as the smartphone got more commoditized, you've seen like either like Pharrell with like weird gold dipped phones or something like that, or people jewel encrust their cases, so their cases are worth X many thousands of dollars. I think it just speaks to that. This is that emotional, persuasive, itch-scratching market that they need to tap into.
Yeah, but I mean, as Tom alluded, the fashion aspect of the early BlackBerries was nominal at best, right? They weren't attractive in the same way. They were attractive because of their productivity, right? The same way that the early smartwatches were attractive to early adopters because of their productivity. You know, people loved showing off the Pebble because they were programmable. It's like a nerd gushing over an Arduino board that they designed, right? Because of what it can do, not because of how it looks. Whereas the Apple Watch tries to blend both worlds. They try to be as functional as possible and as fashionable as possible, and they try to appeal to both, you know, to so many disparate demographics. Athletes can pick up a device for $450, $350 in the U.S., all the way up to the Beyoncé spending $22,000 on a rose gold version, right? So they're trying to appeal to every type of potential buyer.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't focus on the addition too much. It really was a marketing play. Like you said, like they only need to sell so many to make money back. But it also was positioning them as a luxury brand, and it's catering to people that $10,000 is not a lot. Like in the watch world, $10,000 is not a lot. In the fashion world, $10,000 is not a lot.
Yeah.
So it seems a lot for a gadget that you would buy in Best Buy, but it's not a lot if you're on, you know, High Street or, you know, Bloor Street in Toronto, going to Holt Renfrew and buying a pair of Prada boots.
Or West London.
Seeing on Twitter, people saying who has $10,000 lying around, and like the people who have $500,000 lying around.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, you know, like I would focus more on the watch mid-tier. I think the mid-tier is priced too high. I think the mid-tier at, what is it? It's like $500 or so.
It's $600. It's $699 for the cheapest Apple watch.
See, guys, that's too much. Like, and that's the one that I want. Like, Daniel, like you got to try them out. Like, how was the Sport? Because the Sport looked a little bit, I don't know, did it look nice? And you saw it in person.
So it's interesting how they frame it on their website. So, for example, you can buy all three of them, including the Edition, with a sports strap if you want to, right? The sports strap is a polyfluoroethylene or whatever. It's basically a rubber strap. But the way that they show it off on their on the site, they show the watch Sport with the sports strap, the watch itself with a leather or metal strap, and then the Edition with the modern buckle, which is also leather. So they don't show either of the top two versions with the least expensive strap, even though you can buy one with them. It speaks to the marketing around these products. The aluminum version, the Sport model, doesn't actually feel cheap at all. It feels actually like any other aluminum product. It feels like an iPhone. So what's
interesting? So it's just the strap that makes it look cheap?
Yes, the strap makes it feel cheap, but the actual chassis, the body itself, is made out of a beautifully machined aluminum, and the only difference between that and the watch itself is the fact that stainless steel is considerably heavier.
Do you know what, though? That's the loophole then. Everyone buy a Sport and then go get third-party straps when they come out.
Right.
And there you go.
But, like, who cares? So we're talking about two things. Daniel made an interesting point about, like, I think we're right that the edition is less important than all the other varieties and sizes and just versions of this smartwatch, where there's, like, I don't know, and like an infinite number of, which is, for the longest time, Apple has made like one product or two products for everybody and made that compelling, whereas with these they have to make, just for the physical restrictions of people's wrists, different sizes and different approaches. But when we're talking about pricing, and I also saw some tweets online where, like, they haven't talked at all about specs of the device. Nobody cares. There's no way to say that this thing is too expensive, because it's like a new category. If people want it and it has a compelling experience, they're gonna spend on it. There's no major competitor, and apologies to Motorola or anybody else, that is sitting at parity with Apple for you to say, oh, that one's too expensive and this one's the right price because they do the same things, or they're equal in value in my mind, but this one costs more. This is like literally them creating a new device category, because no one except for, like, the people that we know care about the Pebble.
It's not them creating a new device category, because the Pebble, like all the Android Wear watches, like that, they already existed. Like, the device category was there. I understand what you're saying, and I think you can argue that the functionality and the design and their attention to, like, the fashion as well as the technology side of it is a new take on a current device, but I don't think it's fair to say that they've established a new device category, because they haven't. Smartwatches were there before.
Replace category with industry.
What?
Replace the word category with industry.
They haven't. They haven't done that either.
Apple is the only company. I think that Doug is saying that Apple is the only company that can make 27 varieties of the same device, scale up the production and distribution across 3 different materials, sell it in a retail store that is completely unrivaled by any other company in the world, and get as much attention for those things as they have. That's really their triumph.
It's a thing now because Apple's doing it.
Yeah, and I think the retail experience is key. The fact that Apple, compared to a Motorola, compared to an LG, compared to a Google, except for now the new Google Store, they have the retail experience. That's something that the other tech companies don't have. But I'll tell you that selling this as a tech item, as much as it is a tech item, the real competitor are the watch makers. I think, like, once Android Wear or a Tizen or a WebOS or whatever starts becoming available to watchmakers, and then they start selling them in their own retail stores, that's really when it's a new ball game, in my opinion. And I still think, like, although I'm really eager to see the Apple Watch in person, and it does look beautiful, and I think I'm more excited about how beautiful the design of the operating system and the apps look than the watch itself, I'm still eager to see some of the fashion brands step up to the plate and give us what they do best, which is fashion, and let the tech providers do what they do best, which is the tech. And then we have this new hybrid world, and we're not seeing that quite yet.
Yeah, like, Tom's totally right. Like, so the luxury watch manufacturers are going to win when they partner with whatever smartwatch OS platform wins out, whether that's Android or Tizen. So that means Google probably wins, and then all of the traditional consumer electronic manufacturers are going to not win in the way that they don't win in selling Android smartphones. And even if that ends up being 80% of the market, quote unquote, Apple's not going to care, because they're going to own 20% of the market and make a junk ton of money off of that margin, and it'll be the smartphone market again. But does anyone actually want one of these?
Well, according to the poll on MobileSyrup, it didn't look like it. I was actually quite shocked with that one. Guys, I hate to say this, but I have to leave in like a minute.
Okay.
But I will say that even though that poll didn't look too promising, and I'm not quite sure if it changed, I'm optimistic that we'll see a lot of smartwatches on people's risks, both the Android Wear and Apple Watch, at least comparatively to what we saw before. Is it going to be 15 million for Apple? Is it going to be 26 million for Apple? I'm not quite sure. I think if you just look at the fact that they sold 74 million iOS devices in last quarter alone, even if they grabbed 1 or 2% of that, for smartwatches, just because people want to see what it's all about, they out of all the others have the opportunity to really get a lot of market share here and really take this category to the next level. And just the fact that they're in it is really the big thing. Just the fact that they put a stamp of approval and the fact that they said, yes, wearable technology is something that we have on our radar, that in itself is what was really important as well.
I completely agree, and we'll leverage the insights that you've given us to continue this conversation. Tom, thank you so much for joining us, and when you're back in Toronto, we'll have you on another podcast for more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'll see you soon. Miss you.
All right.
Good job on you, Tommy.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Travel safe.
That's
Bye.
interesting. Ooh. What Tom was saying about the fact that they've put their stamp on it. It was something that I had actually thought about when you guys were talking earlier on about early adopters and stuff. I feel like at this point, when Apple is doing something, it's no longer like the people buying it are not early adopters anymore. Like I don't think anybody buying the Apple Watch is an early adopter. They're like, oh, Apple made it, it must be perfect already, and then they're gonna go buy it, even if it doesn't have the functionality, even if the first gen is gonna be totally different from the second generation. I feel like, and you can say that even with the smartphone, is that the iPhone came so long after like PDAs and Blackberries and stuff, and it was when Apple thought that a smartphone could have a meaningful impact on the general consumer as opposed to someone who had a BlackBerry and it's like, I have it because I'm so busy.
Yeah. So one minor adjustment to that, 'cause I think you're pretty much spot on, is that you're totally right. I would say that there are the people that buy the first version are still considered early adopters, but then the mass awareness around that device is created because Apple's doing it. So even if the broad populace doesn't buy the first version, they're aware of the product category or there's an industry around it because of that version. So maybe they'll buy the next one, they'll buy the Apple Watch Mini, or they'll get it at Christmas, but they're now thinking about that as a thing that they might want, need, love, because the biggest consumer electronics company in the world decided that not only did they put their stamp on it, Tim and Johnny seem really hyped about making this thing, and more so than they seem hyped about making iPhones.
Well, I also think that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what comes first, the excitement about a new category or the new category itself? Apple has been
Jesus phone.
Right. I mean, look at the way that look at the way that Xiaomi has benefited from the iPhone, both directly and indirectly. A company that basically built at the beginning clones of the world's most popular phone is now the second most successful phone manufacturer, or third in the world, and their products no longer look like iPhones, and their products no longer owe as much of a debt to the iPhone, but everybody in the smartphone industry owes a debt to Apple and the iPhone as it relates to its its sort of virtuous cycle of carrier relationships, of component commoditization. Qualcomm wouldn't have the same influence on the industry if Apple hadn't chosen them as its baseband provider back in the late 2000s. All of these things have a direct impact on the way that Android has found success, both in the high and low end. I think what's happening here, though, is that with the high-end Apple Watch, nobody really knows whether it's going to impact these analog markets. The analog markets being the high-end watch manufacturers from Tissot, Rolex, Omega, the Swatch group of companies, right? Swatch has a lot to lose. A lot of it's going to have to diversify or figure out whether will somebody spend $400 on an Apple Watch or spend $100 on a fashion Swatch. I know that's four times the cost, but there's far more than 4 times the value there. And Apple did the same thing by convincing people to spend $199 on an iPhone rather than $199 on a contract rather than $0 for another piece of crap smartphone back in the late 2000s as well. So telling people that they're not, people saying that others are not going to spend money on the Apple Watch is very short-sighted.
Yeah.
Because Apple's proven that time and time again that people are willing to spend money on products that they derive higher value from.
No, I totally agree.
I do.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
Yeah. I did find I was thinking it over in my head because I was wondering about those sport bands, and Tom was saying, well, then everybody should just buy the sport edition and then change the band on it. But they've actually, I just figured out, been really clever with the pricing of those bands, and they've made it so that that's not worth it, because the leather band, which is I guess like the next cheapest option if you don't want to get the rubberized one that comes with the sport, is if you buy a sport, then you have to spend $200 on the leather band. So automatically that takes the price beyond or very close to just getting the Apple Watch, like the middle tier.
Yeah, so I mean, let's look at the pricing. The cheapest sport watch sport in Canada, and we're going by Canadian pricing because that's who listens to our podcast, is $449, and that's for the 38 mil aluminum case with a sport band. Then you're increasing the price by $60 to the, where's that, $70 to the 42 mil with the same band. So it's $519, $449.
Does Apple offer an option of the sport with a leather band, like as standard?
No.
Okay,
no.
yeah, that's what I thought.
And then the cheapest stainless steel version with the same size casing and same sport band is $669. So it's $250 difference. So as you said, that difference, you're either going to have to buy a band that's less than $250, and the only one that I can see here is the Milanese Loop, which is $199. Oh, sorry, there's also the leather loop. So you will be able to augment your sport.
But you're still then going to be in yeah, and I think that's what I would do if someone told me here is $650, I would still go for the sport with the leather band, because at least that way I have two bands.
Right, and you'd be able to swap them out when you're running.
Okay.
But then a lot of people would say, well, I want a fancier one.
We're talking about like bands here.
Talking about bands.
Talking about bands, not the game. Bands,
not the watch.
No, like, and I get this because this is what we do. We talk about the detailed stuff, and obviously when people are buying these things, they're gonna want to make that personalized choice about which one, what color, what thing works for them, price point, all that, and that's where Tom's point about the retail experience really matters a lot, and it's a strength that Apple has because they own that, but then also it's a little underwhelming from what it seems like their display is going to be. But can we just talk about like the actual watch itself as a thing? Because like I want to try one because that's how we do. I don't want one. I don't want Instagram on my wrist. Being able to check to see if my Uber's coming is cool, but I have a phone. Like I don't have any reason to have this on my wrist. Like I really don't. And I like cool stuff.
I think it goes back to what Tom was saying.
Seems like the most interesting thing.
Because Tom was saying, with the notifications, he was saying that there was demonstrations during that event of you being able to use the watch to do things that you can't do with your phone, and in a new way. And I think that goes back to, I think it was when I was talking to Neptune, and he was saying that, I mean, their products are crazy, but he was saying that your smartwatch doesn't offer you anything beyond what your phone can do already. It just does the same thing, but on your wrist, and saves you those couple seconds taking your phone out. And I think that's the most interesting part about the Apple Watch, is that it is giving a glimmer of hope that there may be, that there is an entire world beyond your phone and beyond what your phone offers you. But I don't know if it has that yet. I think a couple years maybe.
So what's interesting about the watch is if you're framing it as an iPhone accessory, then I don't think a lot of people are going to be interested in it. But if you're taking what you can currently do on your iPhone and differentiating between the limitations of what's in your pocket and what you can currently do with an Apple Watch, just for, the first gen Apple Watch, then there begins to you begin to see value, but only when it applies to sort of other Apple Watch users. So, for example, my biggest takeaway was the digital touch feature. The fact that I'm not gonna be sending dick pics or hearts to like random people. Maybe I will. Who knows?
Only your coworkers.
Only you guys.
Yay!
But what I see is that this opens up a new world of communication that the iPhone currently can't offer you.
Yeah.
Maybe next generation. We reported on a Wall Street Journal article yesterday that said the next iPhone will have the Force Touch display that's currently in the Apple Watch. Awesome. Who knows? But right now, the value proposition of buying an Apple Watch is that it gives you time back from your phone. I don't think a lot of people really want time back from their phone, right?
Okay.
Sorry.
Before we even get into whether we want people to, like, the concept of whether or not getting time back is compelling enough for people to spend money on the electronics is really interesting. It's kind of a wait and see. But the question of whether or not it actually gives time back, I think, is something that we can discuss now. Because if the Apple Watch is really an accessory for your iPhone, that how to together. So if you are seeing and receiving notifications on your wrist, and I think you only get notifications when it's connected to your skin. So it's not just going off with notifications at all time. It's only when you're wearing it. And then you're doing things on your wrist and it's saving you time. But then when you actually do go back to your iPhone, you have a bunch of other notifications or clutter or things that the watch was showing you that the iPhone wasn't smart enough to realize you've already taken care of still there. You're just having to go back and do the same thing. And we had this conversation a lot about the integration of iOS 8 and the Mac OS X and how they're starting to share responsibilities between each other. But it's not there yet in terms of really having this connectivity identity of like, this is my laptop, this is my phone, they're working together for me in the right context. So if I'm just buying another like digital on my wrist that isn't smartly working with so that I only have to be using one or the other, like it's not saving me time. It's creating additional redundancy. It's creating a little stress. It's the annoyance that I had with Pebble, where I really felt like I was trying to force this thing to be something I wanted to be that it couldn't. So I was now making a lot of snap decisions about whether it was easier to pull up my phone or do something on my wrist, and I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about any of this.
Yeah, but I think that's something Apple thought of back when they first started developing the software on the Apple Watch. For example, if I receive a Pebble notification, if I dismiss it on my wrist, it actually dismisses it on my phone as well. I mean, there is synchronization between the two, and I can only imagine that Apple will address issues that other smartwatches connected to its own operating system had far before the Apple Watch, was ready to come to market.
Yeah, they got on that copy paste thing so fast too. So.
Yeah, but I also think that that's funny. You're being sarcastic.
Yep.
But I also think that Apple has sort of, they're giving people a little bit too much freedom with the watch right now. It can do notifications, it can do apps, it can do glances, it can do communication, it can do phone calls, it can do Siri-based text replies, it can do voice replies, it can do so much. But like many other products that purport to do too much, it may not do everything well. And I think that's where a lot of people who were bullish on the iPhone and even on the iPad have become a little bit more skeptical, including myself, on smartwatches, because every time I put on an Android Wear watch and I try to figure out how it's going to improve my life, I ended up taking it off after a couple of days because the Android phone is far more valuable to me in my hand than an Android Wear watch on my wrist.
Yeah. So what do we want to hand off to our wrist?
Yeah, and that's really the big question.
Is it really bad that I'm like kind of telling the time? I just hate that I take my phone out so often to look at the time.
That's true, though. I mean, really, they have to do a better job.
So I'm like, yeah, the smartwatch can tell me the time. That's what I'd like.
Okay. Well, that's good.
And honestly, like, you're totally right. Telling the time and seeing notifications is like that actually, if it's just like a really simple way to just like stay connected in the moment and not have to think about it, that's great. But I get so many different types of notifications that my eye prioritizes as equal, or prioritizes it's not smart, doesn't handle them in any
No, you're cutting out there,
being
Doug.
committed to situations. Oh.
No, I think you're cutting
Is
out
this
because
real?
I can't hear you either.
Yeah, this is real life, David.
Okay. I guess I'm just trying to say, like, if it's the phone experience on the wrist, even the simple telling time and notifications will be more stressful than just pulling out my phone.
Right. So I think they have to figure out, like Google now does with Android Wear, is there passive information that you can glean that doesn't rely on notifications, and then you can turn off notifications, or at least turn off the apps, turn them off for most apps except for the most important ones.
Yeah. But it's weird because you said like for me you really struck a chord when you said stressful, because I do when I look at my watch and I've say posted yet another picture of my cat on Instagram and I see like an Instagram notification like it's not just that it's not enough to tell me that I have an Instagram notification, because seeing it on my watch makes me want to take out my phone because I'm like, oh, what is it? Like when I see all these notifications on my watch, it just makes me want to take out my phone more. So it's not like even when it's giving me that passive information and these unimportant things that I don't need to look at my phone to know that I like my cat photo. Like my watch can tell me that I shouldn't need to take out my phone, but I still do it.
Yeah, so it's the tease effect. You know, the most apps are not set up to give you enough information. They're just set up enough to tease you about the information that's inside the app.
It's not even information, it's context. Like, why would we ever want, like, especially, like, you know, you're totally right about Instagram notifications and checking your phone versus my work email account versus my personal email account. My personal email account where I get an email from my mother versus, like, Club Monaco being like, hey, sweaters are here. Like, if it's on your wrist and even on your phone, like, to be honest, like this should be figured out, but it's really hard. If all of those notifications are created equal, you're actually like shackling your wrist.
Right.
Like, you know, XKCD was totally right. There was a few years in which our wrists were gloriously free, and now they're being shackled by this digital identity. And
right.
When it comes to managing that stuff, if I have to go in app by app and like tell like, okay, I don't want this, I don't want that, like the management of the management is stressful enough. It's like it's why no one solved calendar and contacts, because it's like it just takes work.
So then maybe you turn off notifications and just let the watch do whatever else it's good at. And the thing is, with existing smartwatches, you can't really do a whole lot more. But with Apple Watch, you can, because there are apps that allow you to open things, perform functions, send messages, check information without there being a reciprocal message from your phone.
Yeah. I think it's just I don't know. For me, it's like an interesting conundrum of what do I consider priority notifications and what do I consider notifications that, while I may enjoy saying, ooh, flag, Facebook, I shouldn't be looking at that all day, every day, and I shouldn't be allowing that to dictate when I take out my phone because it's not important. Like, I don't need to, like, check Instagram or check Facebook 9 times a day. I need to check it once. And I feel like if my watch can tell me just phone calls, maybe text messages and email, and then everything else social should be relegated to these don't show up on your watch, they only show up on your phone. I don't know.
I don't think Apple wants their product to make your life more annoying. I don't think anybody wants their product to make your life more annoying.
Totally
But
not.
I mean, especially Apple, who's all about customer delight and experience.
Yeah.
And I think that if there are features that customers dislike about the first-gen software, we'll see them ramped. We'll see them sort of scale back in the second version. I also think that this is not really indicative of what the Apple Watch is going to be 4 years from now. Just like the original iPhone looks and feels nothing like today's iPhone, this is no longer going to be a standalone. Sorry, it's not going to be a tethered device for much longer. I would give it 2 generations before it's a standalone product with its own LTE chip. I think that it was important for Apple to get the product into the market, to seed it, to make sure that people knew about it. But this is not the final version of the Apple Watch. You can rest assured that anything Apple can do to make this an independent product, the way that the iPod and iPhone were originally tethered to a Mac to set up and to download apps and music, and that was no longer the case after iOS 5. I think this is going to take on a very similar trajectory.
Yeah, and I think they can. That will also. The sooner they can do that, the sooner they can justify. The sooner then that people will become, I think, more accepting of the price and find the price easier to swallow. Because that's, I think, one of the issues that some people have right now is it's a companion device. So, I have to pay $500 for it. That's kind of crazy.
Well, the other thing that's interesting and something that a lot of analysts that I've read have been going back and forth on is, what is the replacement cycle for an Apple Watch? Is it a 1-year replacement cycle or a 2-year like a phone, or is it more of a 3 to 4 to maybe even 5-year replacement cycle for like an iPad or a computer?
Yeah, I think they've already learned with the iPad like a very important lesson in the fact that unless it's your phone, which is like has this kind of like Moore's law of like power and new things, there's not that much need to at a 18-month cadence completely replace the device, which is why I think like that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I'm just saying I think that's probably one of the reasons we haven't heard about hardware yet, is because they're probably banking on this hardware to last quite a while, but those iterative changes that you're talking about, Daniel, where you're saying like one generation is going to be different, like the second generation is going to be, the third generation is going to be drastically different from the first generation. I think a lot of those changes will come with software updates.
Yeah, and I mean, look at something like the Pebble. The original Pebble was introduced in April 2012. It came to market January 2013. It's still being updated with new software experiences.
Like its biggest beef is that it looks like garbage, but it's still the same great product.
So Apple's pretty much, I mean, you could argue that the Apple Watch is ugly. Some people have. I don't think they're right. I think it's a relatively good-looking timepiece. I think you can make it personal enough that you can overcome any of those inherent aesthetic issues, but I don't think anybody would say that, like the Pebble, the Apple Watch is ugly. So if that is the case, if you can buy a decent-looking watch that is timeless and or at least is not going to be outdated in a few years in terms of looks, and you can continue updating the software, the screen isn't going to die. I mean, the OLED screen is probably going to last 10 years. The battery is replaceable. We figured that out. You can take it in and get it replaced. So what else do you really need? As long as the chip inside of it doesn't become obsolete in a couple of years, then it should last you 10 years easily.
I think you're right in the sense that maybe third generation it will probably be a standalone device. I think that this might be the only Apple Watch we see before the standalone Apple Watch. I think that the hardware inside is enough to carry it through several updates that will enhance the functionality and change how the watch works. And I think that the next new Apple Watch will be the standalone one. I think that that's when they'll probably have no choice but to change the hardware.
So you think that they're going to wait more than a year to update this?
No.
No, I don't think. I think
because they like money, and whether or not people are going to upgrade device, whether or not people will upgrade their smartwatches at the cadence of a smartphone or a tablet. Apple still releases yearly products because there's always net new optimizations, and like they have a brand built upon making, like I have a 2014 MacBook Air that I love that made my 2013 MacBook Air look like a piece of garbage. And now the new MacBook makes this in certain ways just look stodgy and fat. Like they part of their business practice is on continuous iteration. But in terms of the specs and stuff, what are, like, Apple's never really been a spec company at the best points in time.
Yeah.
What are the points of specs when the experience hasn't even been defined? Because specs are a measuring stick of iterative improvements, and no one needs to know. Like it's a thing. Here's the stuff that it does. Here's what here's how you're gonna feel
But I
using
think
it.
now that they've told us the stuff that it does, if they told us the specs, we'd be like, wow, it seems like that stuff is capable of allowing it to do so much more. That would tell us
maybe
a lot,
it
I
is.
feel like.
Yeah.
That's what
Just
I mean.
like a ton of like we wrote this week that Android Wear may be updated to take advantage of Wi-Fi. Most of the products that have been released to date probably have Wi-Fi chips in them. We just don't know about them because Google hasn't turned them on yet.
Mm-hmm.
So let's assume that Apple has a bunch of tricks up its sleeve when it comes to hardware experiences that are already in the Apple Watch. I mean, we saw what everybody was amazed at the A7, right? The A7, a 64-bit chip, completely new architecture, designed in-house, came out of nowhere essentially. Nobody expected the A7. They could have done the same thing with the S1. This could have a 5-year head start on any similar designed watch equivalent system on a chip. I mean, it's no mistake that every chip inside an Apple Watch or inside an Android Wear watch right now is just an off-the-shelf quad-core Snapdragon 400 with a couple of the cores disabled, because they wanted to bring these out soon. Apple took their time, and we don't know. Maybe once iFixit or what's that other company that does those deep dives? Yeah, they're going to look into the chip itself and figure out that this is a super advanced 14 nanometer blah blah blah, and could be awesome. I know that Doug, you have to run, so I appreciate you're spending some time with us today.
I'm out of time.
You are out of time.
But alternative suggestion for podcast title: Chrono Trigger.
PlayStation. What?
For the nerds out there. All right, I'm gone. See you in the future.
I love that his face just like stalled for a second before he said that. See you in the future.
There with two.
Sure. So now.
So hit me with that CRTC.
Yeah. So the second part of this, I mean, just to sort of round down the Apple Watch thing. So.
I'm just like, we're done with that now.
Because I was really impressed by the size of it. What's interesting is that you often say that most Android Wear watches are too big for most women's wrists. And the one thing that I took away from the Apple Watch event was that they were very cognizant of the consumer that they were marketing this to. So while some Android Wear like Motorola is keenly aware of how much bigger the Moto 360 is than it needs to be comfortable on most women's wrists. And they've come out with some slimmer bands to try to make up for it. But Apple, and there you go, you have the gold band. And it's beautiful. I mean, don't get me wrong.
It is. It's gorgeous.
But the watch face itself is still too big for most people.
Yeah, but I think and this goes to show that, I mean, when you go back and you look at those Michael Kors watches and like all those ones that are selling like a kind of a chunkier women's watch, I think there's a lot to be said for those types of watches and how much they demonstrate that chunky is okay as long as it's still a well-designed and pretty device. And I think that's why I like this watch. I don't mind that it's chunky because I think that it draws attention in a good way. But when it's chunky and ugly, it's like, oh, and it's too big.
Okay, interesting. So do you think that So I know that it's sort of one of those things where Apple's only designing some straps for the smaller size because they don't think that they think that women will buy that size and men will buy the bigger size. But I also know a lot of men who want to buy the 38. I have pretty slim wrists. I think the 38 actually looks better on me. And some women are going to want to buy the 42. So they're aware that it's not about sex or gender. It's about preference and about positioning, that they have the capability of offering two sizes.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's important to note, I think, too, is that so far we've seen like several kind of like, oh, and then we sell a slimmer band for people who want a slimmer band, and it's never, they never explicitly say we sell a women's band, and Motorola doesn't either, but it's kind of, it seems a lot more clear and apparent that's what it is that and we've got this for women's wrists or whatever. But I feel like Apple, based on the configurations that they offer of, because you can buy any band as an accessory, but they have 34 different options for, this face with that band, and there is no discernible gender divide between which ones they offer.
No,
Which
and
is
I think
interesting.
that's the right way to go,
Yeah.
especially with the edition. They're offering 18 karat yellow gold and 18 karat rose gold, and they're offering certain combinations of colors, not because they're gendered, but just because the band colors go better with the casing colors. And
Like black and yellow, and then the rose gold and whatever that
yeah, and I
is.
mean, if I could afford a $19,000 42 millimeter 18 karat yellow gold case with a black classic buckle, I would wear it, and I don't really like yellow gold. So I find that to be interesting. And I think some people don't realize that stainless steel watches, like the smartphone industry, is awash with aluminum because aluminum is cheap and it's also very pliable. It's light. It's the best material for smartphones to be created in bulk. Stainless steel is heavy. There are only a few stainless steel smartwatches and smartphones rather, and I think BlackBerry's Classic and the Q10, they have stainless steel frames, but they're not made entirely of stainless steel.
And they're still heavy.
And they're very heavy. I mean, they're beautifully created and they're hefty, and like there's a reason that stainless steel is associated with quality, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize just how much stainless steel products cost, because when you say something is stainless steel, it may not be entirely stainless steel. It's going to be an alloy where they have a combination of stainless steel, which is already an alloy, but they have a combination of stainless steel and something else, like magnesium or, I don't know, copper maybe. But this is, it's made from refined 316L stainless steel that's been cold forged, making it up to 80% harder than regular stainless steel.
Of course.
So, I mean, again, they've patented a ton of different manufacturing processes, but when somebody says, "Oh, I would never pay $800 for an Apple Watch," you're not really buying it for the watch itself. You know that you could get the watch for $450. You're buying it for the materials inside the casing. And people who don't want to spend that much or wouldn't spend that much on a watch anyway need not apply. I think that's just the reality.
Yeah, I'm also wondering that because there are going to be so many people who are like, I know that we've talked about it multiple times over the last couple of weeks where we say it is going to be like a status symbol, and I don't know, was it you who said it, but it's something that I think about, and it's weird. I've been thinking about this, like I think about this regularly over, and I have for probably the last 10 years, I guess, is that the white earbuds and how they used to mean so much. Like the white earbuds used to mean that person has an iPod, that person spent hundreds of dollars on an MP3 player as opposed to spending significantly less on an MP3 player. And I feel like the Apple, and I remember there was like, I don't know if it was the same here, but in Europe, there was definitely like an increase in the number, like if you had the white earbuds, you were kind of making yourself a target. If you were like walking down a sketchy street and you had the white earbuds, like, and you got mugged, people were like, well, you were wearing those Apple earbuds, like, what did you expect? And I feel like more people would be, well, I don't know, you went to Mobile World Congress where everyone told you you're going to get mugged or pickpocketed.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, oh, you're setting yourself up to be attacked because...
Not setting yourself up, but people were saying, like, well, you advertised the fact that you had it. One of these expensive devices.
I know people who would go and buy iPod headphones to wear with a creative MP3 player because they wanted to be known as somebody who was using an iPod.
I knew people in school whose parents would go out and buy them regular earbuds to use with their iPods so that they would feel better about knowing their child was walking home from school, not wearing, not advertising the fact that they had this expensive piece of technology with them. But I wonder if this is going to be an issue with the Apple Watch. People are going to say, not necessarily, oh, look, Beyonce has a $20,000 Apple Watch, but hey, that random kid over there has an $800 watch. I wonder what else he has.
But the thing is, when you look at an Apple Watch from far away, especially the stainless steel versus the aluminum, you can't tell which is which.
No, I know, but I'm saying that even if someone had the regular version with a leather band or even just the sport version, it would still be, I feel like, enough to attract attention.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. A 15-year-old kid who begged his parents for a $350 Apple Watch for Christmas is going to be just as much of a target as, a rich
Yeah.
Wall Street banker who's buying a $22,000 Apple Watch, and I mean that's really just the Apple brand, right? It's your target is if you're wearing an Apple product because Apple just has higher resale value, higher and lower depreciation values than any other consumer brand. So yes, obviously, and I think what's interesting is that with the Apple Watch, you should be able to disable it from working the same way as you would with an iPhone using the activation lock. So you can the Apple Watch has the ability to stop working if it's not touching your skin.
Yes.
And if you have an iPhone that's paired with it, theoretically, and I should probably check on this, but theoretically you should be able to shut down the use of the Apple Watch if it's not paired with your phone anymore.
Right, and that's something they were seeing even with newer devices too. Like Android 5.1 has the device protection, which allows if your phone is stolen and someone turns it on, that you can you can prevent them from doing a factory reset unless they enter in your your Google account information.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So I think that's something that even just consumer electronics as a whole are moving towards, is better protection for the owner of the product. But it is interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it is interesting that it's also like all other jewelry. It's meant to be worn and seen.
Yeah.
And it's Apple's first product that is meant to be seen all the time, and yet it's their first product that doesn't have an Apple logo anywhere on it. That it alone, it by itself, as a cohesive whole, is an Apple logo. It's a status symbol for Apple.
Yeah, but it does look distinctly like it reminds me a lot of like the iPhone and also that what's it called, the iPod Nano and those kinds of devices. Like it's got that kind of like look and feel about it. So I think it's just that Apple has reached the point where it's recognizably Apple as opposed to it needs a logo on it. And I wonder did that influence the design of it in some way? Is that why it wasn't round or whatever?
But you can be very sure that within 6 months there are going to be tons of Apple Watch smartwatch knockoffs.
Oh yeah, there was one at CES. It looked exactly the same, like exactly the same, except it ran Android.
Well, no, the difference is that like Google doesn't allow random, like there's no open source Android Wear.
I was gonna say I think
base.
I don't know if it ran Android Wear or if it was in like a real-time OS.
Or it just may run Android, like the Neptune Pine.
Yeah.
It would just be a really shrunk down version of Android, which is not.
I don't know.
Nobody wants that. So.
The Neptune Pine, yeah, it looks like a GoPro.
Oh man. So anyway, I think once Apple Watch. So what's another thing that's really interesting, and the final thing I'll say about it is that they're coming out with preview stations inside Apple stores 2 weeks before the product actually goes on sale on April 24th.
Yeah.
So on April 10th, you can go to the Apple store and try on a watch without being able to buy it.
And I wonder if you pre-order in store.
You can pre-order it on April 10th, and it'll ship to you on the 24th. But you can also go in and try them.
No, but can you pre-order it from the store?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Because that could be why.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I think they just want to attract the curious.
And then say, yeah, it's available for pre-order right now. Yeah.
So.
And everybody will be curious. Even the people who aren't going to buy it, like all those people in the MobileSyrup poll who said they're not going to buy it. Oh, I would love to see how many of them go to the Apple store to see it once it's there.
Oh, look, I mean, our audience is by no way indicative of the mainstream.
No, I know, but that's what I mean. Even the people who don't want it will be curious.
Oh yeah, I know, and I think a lot of people who claim that they don't want to buy it will buy it.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Sometimes being curious is enough because that can that can change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But.
So don't say we didn't warn you.
Yeah, like Tom said, you'll see it and it will plant the seed, and then you will buy one too.
Yeah, or you'll buy one for your kid because she or he wants one, and that's the beginning of the end for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who have bought Apple products for their kids and then went, oh, I want that.
Yeah.
So, moving on, CRTC. The CRTC decision to force content owners like Roger Shaw and Bell to offer programming to all Canadians is a big, big step. So basically there was a decision today based on a hearing last year. Was it last year or was it earlier this year? I can't remember. About Let's Talk TV. Okay, yeah. So it was based on the television framework throughout Canada, And what the decision means is that there are going to be different quotas for Canadian content when shown on regular television stations. And there's also going to be different definitions of what it means to be Canadian. So there are now, I think you have to have at least one producer, one writer, or one director who's Canadian for it to apply. But perhaps the most important decision for our readers is that the CRTC is not going to allow owners of services like Show Me or Crave TV to keep them exclusive to cable subscribers if they're offering exclusive content. So, for example, Crave TV offers the back catalog of HBO. They won't be allowed to do that. They won't be allowed to offer that to just their own cable or partner cable providers, as long as they offer exclusive content without offering it to other internet service providers. So, Rogers.
Give me a scenario. I'm Debbie, and I do Rogers TV and internet, and I want to look at that HBO back catalog. What does this decision mean for me? What did it mean yesterday versus today?
Okay, so yesterday, if you were not a Bell or Telus or Eastlink television subscriber, you could not buy Crave TV. You couldn't subscribe. You couldn't spend $4 a month on the ability to subscribe to Crave TV.
Okay.
Okay. This decision says that if Bell wants to continue offering HBO and other exclusive content to its cable subscribers, it has to offer that same service, so Crave TV's mobile apps and its website, to anybody with an internet connection. So
it has to offer it to me now.
Correct. Debbie, as a Rogers internet subscriber, you can't get it on your television because Bell doesn't have to offer Rogers that package for their cable subscribers. But if you're a Rogers internet subscriber, you will be allowed to watch Crave TV.
Does Debbie have a Chromecast?
Well, that's the thing. Debbie should, Bell.
Debbie should get one.
They may not be, forced to provide that kind of service. Right now, Show Me doesn't offer AirPlay or Chromecast support. But what's interesting here is that Show Me, which is a co-owned product by Rogers and Shaw, already offer Rogers and Shaw internet customers the ability to subscribe to Show Me for $8 a month. The difference here is that, Debbie, you're a Bell cable subscriber. Or I say cable, but Bell doesn't offer cable. They offer IPTV, but I'll use cable because it's a broad.
That's right. Yeah.
If Rogers wants to continue offering exclusive Amazon content, they bought Transparent. They have a ton of other exclusives. They will then have to offer it to Bell internet subscribers as well.
Right. Okay.
So anybody who has an internet connection who buys buys internet service from an ISP, regardless of where in the country, they will be able to subscribe to these services.
Cool. And that doesn't mean that you'll be able to get the same service as Tom, the Rogers, or the, I don't know, say, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get the same service they're going to offer to their own customers. They can still offer perks to their own customers. It's just that you will have the option of buying it full stop. They can still charge you more. They can still say that we offer our own subscribers for internet a discount, but you can't. You'll be allowed to, as long as you're willing to show them the money. You'll be willing to.
Yeah, I think what it means, it's unclear whether there are loopholes here, but it's unclear whether Rogers will be able to say, okay, well, if you want to subscribe to Show Me from any ISP, you can do so, but we'll give you. If you're a Rogers subscriber, we'll give you extra content, or we'll give you
Transparent
content
for free or something.
Right, or we'll. I mean, I think what they'll do is they'll end up knocking off some money for existing Rogers subscribers.
Yeah.
So they'll offer Show Me to Rogers and Shaw subscribers for $8 a month, but if you are a Bell subscriber, you may be charged $20 a month.
Oof. Yeah.
Right. So they may just make it really
prohibitively
inhospitable.
expensive. Yeah.
And the other thing that I saw was that Bell will say, okay, well, we're gonna make Crave exclusive to Bell subscribers, to Bell TV subscribers, and that way we can offer it over the internet to anybody, but we may limit it to Bell TV. They wouldn't actually do that because that's bad business. But they could also say, okay, well then we'll give it to anybody who wants to spend $30 a month, but we'll give it to Bell. We'll rack up the price of Bell Internet by $4 or $5 a month, and we'll offer it for free. So everybody who's not Bell can spend $30 a month on Crave, which is basically what you do on TMN through a cable subscription anyway.
Yeah.
And then if you're a Bell subscriber on internet, you can get it for free. They're gonna find a way to mess with this decision for sure.
Yeah.
But it is good news for people who want access to that content. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is that the CRTC saw it as being anti-consumer by not allowing content. It's not about the services, it's about the content.
Yeah, and it's not about the price either, really, at this point. Like, that's what we're saying, is that they'll give it to you, they'll just make you pay for it.
Well, the CRTC has never regulated on price.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's like, all the CRTC wants is for Debbie to be able to watch whatever she wants, provided she's willing to pay whatever the people are asking.
Yeah, and that's
that's saying, sort of like, yeah, and I think you're right. It will at a certain point just get to be that subscribers will get perks that the regular Joes won't. Poor Debbie.
It's the same thing with it's the same thing with Rogers and the NHL. So the NHL because it's broadcast on television, Rogers has to provide access to other networks. But because that whatever it's called, the extra angles for the the extra hockey angles. Sorry, my brain's dead right now.
Game Plus or whatever.
Yeah, Game Center Plus. Being able to follow along with the referee or with specific players, that's an internet-only service. And Rogers can then offer it as an exclusive to their customers because it's not offered anywhere over broadcast. So it's interesting. It's going to be challenged. I know that. There's also a community. The CRTC is hosting a hearing and asking people for comment, which is running until April 27th. So nothing is going to change until after April, early May. And until then, I think that it will be very, very up in the air as to what Bell and Rogers and Shaw will do.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a very inarticulate explanation, and I apologize to anybody who had to sit through that. It's been a very long week. Let me put it like that. I've traveled to Barcelona. I came back, had a couple days off, traveled to San Francisco. So I'm not at my sharpest. So I appreciate you bearing with me.
But we love you anyway.
Oh well, thanks. So I think we're gonna leave it there for this week. There's a couple other things coming down the pipe. Really exciting things. We have a few big reviews coming up next week, and I think you can probably guess which ones they are. And we have some really interesting features coming as well. So check out the site. Stay tuned. We're also I'm trying to gauge the interest of a mobile gaming podcast. I have an inkling that a lot of people would be pretty excited about a Canadian-focused mobile gaming podcast. So if you're listening to this, just reply in the comments. Let me know if that would be something you'd be interested in. We'd tell stories from Canadian developers. We'd interview Canadian indie developers. We talk about Canadian success stories, Canadian gaming failures. There's a ton, and I think that a more mobile gaming focus would be a breath of fresh air. So that's my opinion. Let us know what you think as well. As always, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks Tom Emrich for joining us. Thank you Tom Emrich for joining us from England. Douglas Soltis, who had to run early. We appreciate it. Have a great week, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.